I have lived in the same privately owned apartment building since I graduated from college. Well, initially, my dad helped me out with the rent because I had just started my job at an entry-level position. But once my probation period was over and I had started earning enough money, I was able to pay the rent on my own. I could have found an apartment that actually fit my budget from the get-go, but the apartment building in question is one of the most sought after in the whole city. It's pretty central to the city and has a beautiful view. It also has incredible amenities like an indoor and outdoor pool, a gym, a sauna, basketball and tennis courts, an attached golf course, a large park, and a movie theater, just to name a few. Plus, the fact that all visitors have to be signed in by a resident and that security guards man all entrances around the clock was very appealing to my dad, since it would be the first time I was living completely on my own. I was very lucky that I was visiting my cousin who lived in the building, who told me that a resident was giving up their apartment, and so I was able to swoop in before the apartment even went on the market. Finding a rent-controlled apartment with all the perks that came with it is generally next to impossible, so I was very fortunate that I was able to get it, especially since I knew that getting it meant that I would never feel the need to move to a bigger and better place, since I couldn't imagine anything better than this building. I remember thinking that I especially lucked out with the owner since he wasn't forcing everyone to buy the apartments outright out of greed. And while the rent was high, it was just high enough to justify the amount of amenities that were included for a reasonable maintenance fee. It's been a couple of years since I moved into the building, and choosing that apartment, it's still one of the best decisions that I've ever made. Not just because of how incredible the building is, but also because I ended up meeting the love of my life because of it. So the owner of the building had appointed a manager to look after any issues the residents may have. I had gone to speak to the manager about the heating issues that had been going on in my apartment. It was in the middle of winter, and being that it was snowing constantly, the fact that the heating in my apartment wasn't working was very annoying. I was hoping that the manager would recognize the urgency of the situation, but he just brushed me off. He said that he would get to it when he could, but then I didn't hear anything from him for 2 whole days. I went to see him again, but he just told me to stop nagging him and that he had other things to do as well. I was very annoyed at his cavalier attitude and decided to talk to some of my neighbors to figure out if they had similar problems with him. It turns out that almost everyone had had negative interactions with the manager. I asked them if anyone had reported him to the owner, but they told me that they would bring it up at the next residents meeting at the start of the coming month. I wasn't willing to stay in a freezing cold apartment for that long, so I decided to go and speak to the owner myself. The owner of the building had the top 2 floors of the building all to himself. There was a private elevator that had to be used with a password to reach that floor. I decided to go and speak to the security guard and told him to call the owner, John, and tell him that I needed to speak with him urgently. Thankfully, John didn't brush me off like the manager, and he told the security guard to give me the password to the elevator so I could speak to him. When I reached the top floor, I was stunned at how grand and luxurious the penthouse was. It looked like something out of an Architectural Digest magazine. It was my first time meeting John, and I had been expecting an older man, but John looked like he was only 5 or 6 years older than me, and he was very good looking. I told him about the issues that I had been having with the manager, and all the issues other residents had complained about, and John was very apologetic. He immediately sent out a message that he would host a residents meeting the next day to hear everyone's concerns and sort out all of our issues. He apologized to me and told me that he would make sure that my heating got fixed ASAP. I was very grateful, especially since he had professionals at my apartment within an hour of me meeting him, and my problem was fixed that very day. The next day, at the meeting, he heard everyone's concerns and realized the need for a new manager and promised everyone that he would hire a more competent person and told us that until he did, he would make sure everyone's problems were solved personally. After the meeting ended, John actually asked me out and we've been dating ever since. I recently moved into the penthouse with him. Living together had been like a dream until this incident. John was out of town on business, and when I came home from work, I saw that the door to the penthouse was ajar and there were sounds coming from inside. I knew it couldn't be John, so I called the security guard from the intercom in the elevator to come upstairs. Once he arrived, we entered the apartment together. There was nobody in the living room or kitchen, but when we went to the bedroom, there was a woman there who was going through all of my stuff. I asked her who she was, and when she turned around, I saw that it was John's ex-wife. I was shocked to see her in our apartment since I had only seen a photo of her before, but had never met her face to face. John had told me that she had cheated on him, and when he found out, he immediately filed for divorce. He had also told me stories about how crazy she was and had no respect for boundaries and would get violent. As a part of their divorce settlement, she had gotten an apartment in her name in John's building, but I had never run into her before. She had obviously broken into our apartment, and so I told her to get out before I called the police. I was very glad that the security guard was with me because she refused to leave and instead started shouting that I had no right to say anything to her since she practically owned the building. The security guard was escorting her to the door, but when we reached the living room, she just sat on the ground and refused to leave. I asked her what her motive was for behaving like that, and she told me that she wouldn't leave until she met John's new girlfriend. She said that she had found out only recently that John was dating someone new, and she had to do something about it. I told her that I was John's girlfriend, and she was trespassing on our property, but she just said that since she was John's ex-wife, the property was more hers than mine, and so I was the one who was actually trespassing. I couldn't believe her logic, and I told her to leave before I was forced to call the police. She said that she wouldn't leave until I packed my bags and got out of John's apartment. I asked her why she thought I would do that, and she told me that she and John were obviously going to get back together, and so I needed to get out of the way for my own sake. I told her that John had been very honest with me about their relationship, and had told me that he wanted to stay as far away from her as possible. She just laughed and said that their breakup was temporary, and that I was just a distraction for John. I just laughed and showed her the engagement ring on my finger, and told her that John had asked me to marry him, and if anyone was going to be getting out of his apartment and his life, it was going to be her. She got very angry when she heard me say that, and she came at me and knocked me to the floor. She started attacking me, but thankfully the security guard pulled her off of me. She had used her long nails to scratch my face and left a bruise on my cheek. After the security guard restrained her, I called the police and told them what had happened. I also called John, and he said that he would come back right away. When the police came, John's ex-wife tried to play the victim and said that she had attacked me in self-defense, even though there wasn't even a scratch on her, and despite the fact that I had an eyewitness in the form of the security guard. Thankfully, I also had security camera footage of the living room. When the police asked me if I wanted to press charges, I immediately said yes and told them that I wanted a restraining order against the woman. John had also arrived by that point, and he wanted to know how she had even managed to get the password to the elevator. It turns out that she had been bribing a security guard for the password, and this wasn't the first time that she had broken into John's apartment. The security guard had been erasing the surveillance footage of her breaking in earlier, but they had been recovered from the server by the police. John told the police that he also wanted to press charges against her for trespassing. The woman was arrested, and she would also lose her apartment since after my restraining order was put into place, she was legally not allowed to be in my vicinity. John was able to rent out her apartment while she was awaiting the first of many court cases that she would have to answer to. On a happier note, John and I got married in a beautiful estate and had the best time on our honeymoon in Hawaii. I, a 30-year-old man, work as a cleaner in a school for special needs children. I'm good at what I do, and I take pride in coming in every day to make sure that both the children and the teachers that work there have a clean and safe environment to work in. Some backstory. Before I started working at this location in April 2022, they've had a lot of bad luck with hiring cleaners. As the branch we are in technically falls under specializing cleaning and not general cleaning, in the first 4 months of 2022, they've had 15 cleaners that all disappointed, stopped showing up, or were fired for another reason. This has caused the general custodian of this special needs school, my direct supervisor, to be skeptical of any new cleaner that comes in, which is very fair. Now, I like to give 110% at work. Whether that's smart or not, I'm not sure, but I like to leave my work knowing that I gave it my all. That is why when I saw the daily weekly task list and had done an online course on how to effectively clean, I knew that in practice that would leave a very messy workplace, since not everything would be cleaned correctly. Imagine a desk of a child that has a single eraser on it. According to my online course from the company, That disqualifies that entire desk for cleaning. I won't be allowed to clean it. Furthermore, if chairs are not at the desk, I'm not allowed to sweep or mop under it, because it's not the cleaner's job. As such, I've been making some really positive changes to my work schedule, my daily weekly task lists, and the way I do things to not only meet the minimal requirements that the company asks for, but also to go above and beyond, be flexible with teachers, engage with the students, and leave a beautiful workplace. This went great for a while. Now, the custodian has, for some reason, been getting way more critical of my work. The smallest speck of dust missed or a small drop of coffee spit somewhere that happened after I was done with work. And he's blowing up my phone with text messages that I need to do things differently, in a wasting way, or telling me first thing when I come in that I need to take my work more seriously. This morning, he told me, "Try and stick to the planning and correct methods." So I told him that I would. Now, I started to follow the paper list with daily tasks and my methods completely to a T. Every half-assed method that I knew would leave the classrooms and bathrooms in a horrible state. Trash cans need emptying? Nope, not on my list. One piece of paper on a filthy desk? No longer my problem. Spills in the hallway? Looks like mopping the floor isn't on today's task list. Sorry. The entire place looked horrible. I had to hold myself back to not do more than the list because I hate leaving work unfinished, but I was finally done. I approached the teachers of the classrooms that I had to clean today beforehand, explained the situation, and promised them to give their classrooms a proper cleaning the next day because they and the students shouldn't be the victim of my malicious compliance. But they were in on it. They even agreed to give their signature on my task list to sign off that they think I did all of the work correctly. Naturally, the custodian didn't like my work today. And we had a good heart-to-heart for a moment. I told him that I really appreciate that he wants to safeguard the quality of my work. It's what they pay me for after all. But I hope that I have shown him and some of the teachers that I go above and beyond daily. And today's work, that looked like a mess. That was my company's standard. I also let him know that the constant badgering was incredibly unmotivating. It was really putting a damper on my spirits. I told him that I'd be doing my work normally again tomorrow, and he said he'd appreciate all the work I usually do, and then he'd try to be more flexible, as well as put more trust in me. All's well that ends well, I suppose. I just want to make sure that these special needs children have a clean school to learn, laugh, and play in after all. Years ago, I used to work at a popular ice cream joint. The job was pretty chill. Coworkers were fun to be around, and the pay was alright for a teenager. But, as with every other food service job, the customers made the experience a whole lot worse. Always had the regular annoyances, people yelling at you for long wait times, orders being wrong, etc. Even had a guy get up on the counter and berate me because we were out of bananas for banana splits. But one experience really stood out from the others. We had a regular customer who would come in, no crap, every day to get a strawberry shake. He was fine with long waits, or if our card machines were down. But this dude would summon the might of Satan if his milkshake wasn't made with enough milk in it. Worse, he would sit there and wait until you remade it to his liking. Our stupid store policy made us remake any order for free if the customer wasn't happy with it. One day, this dude comes in and orders, guess what? A strawberry milkshake. I was working the ice cream bar, so filled with defeat that I started making his order. The company recipe was 3 scoops of ice cream for a regular smoothie. Since I knew this guy liked his milky, I only put 2. I handed it to him and went about the next orders until 5 minutes later, he comes back and screams at me that the milkshake wasn't milky enough. Now, every time in the past, I always made it this way, with 2 scoops to give it that milky consistency. This time, I guess he just wanted to mess with me. At this point, I had enough. The day had been rough as it is. So I really didn't want to handle this, especially since I could tell with his crap-eating grin that he had plastered on his bastard of a son's face that he was trying to make my day worse. This is where the malicious compliance comes in. I decided to make the milkiest milkshake possible, but while still being a milkshake by technicality. I went back to my station and started the concoction. I didn't put 2 scoops, I didn't even put 1 scoop. I put 1 tablespoon of strawberry ice cream and filled it to the brim with milk. After the pointless blending, I handed him the milkshake he didn't want, but the one he deserved. I watched him with my own crap-eating grin beaming back at him while he tried his shake. He took a sip and immediately started berating me that it was just milk. I told him, "No, sir, I put strawberry ice cream in there just as you asked." I could see the rage in his eyes as he demanded his order be remade. I then politely informed him our store policy only lets you have your order remade once for free. His face burned bright red as he started muttering something under his breath, then stormed out the door, slamming it behind him. Every time after that, he never asked me to remake his order. A few months later, I got a better job where I didn't have to deal with any angry customers.